Hey, welcome to the Sinner and the Saint. I'm Melissa Bell.
And I'm Allison Kane.
Great news. If you were with us last week, we did the episode on what your pastor wants you to know, but may not ever get a chance to tell you. Well, this week, we're going to tell you what your youth leader or youth pastor wants you to know, but may never get the chance to tell you.
There you go.
Yeah, this all stemmed from a little social media rant that happened 3 episodes ago, because just I see all of the ridiculousness, all the soapboxes people get on, and if you haven't learned anything, standing and shouting from the rooftops doesn't really get you anywhere. It's really in the intentional one-on-one conversations where things happen and you learn more and growth happens. Just like shouting at a group of people and airing your opinion, great. Here's your gold star.
And nobody listened.
Nobody listened. I do think I'm going to start passing out gold stars. Still a thing. So we did a form and we sent it out to youth leaders and youth pastors, and we asked them, what is something you'd want parents to know about their children or about their roles as their parents or what have you. If you want to know most likely how these youth pastors are feeling, you can go listen to last week's episode about what your pastor wants you to know but may never tell you. So we're going to talk about you today and your kids.
Absolutely. They, it's interesting. The youth pastors were a little more bold in their direction.
Yes, they had some facts, my friend.
It was almost as if I felt like the pastors were also in a different place. They were taking up for themselves. So it was very grace and but the youth pastors, the angle is like they're protecting their kids that they're serving.
Yep.
That was their approach. Because we said, what advice would you give to the parents? What do you want them to know? And so maybe that's why the difference.
Well, and it turns out that they do have to give advice to you guys through our podcast, because you just drop your kids off at church and don't show up yourself. You just drop them off at youth and you don't know what's going on. Because if they saw your face, they might tell you. That's our number one, right?
That is one. But here's the thing. Okay, so I do think, I just want to offer the flip side of that.
Yeah, I agree too, because I don't work in youth ministry.
There's definitely a calling for youth ministry.
Amen. I know a few, and y'all are saints.
And as a parent, you understand that once your kid gets to a certain age, middle school, high school, a lot of kids are more embarrassed or closed off if you're around.
Yes, I agree with that.
And so when parents just drop them off, and I think what they're saying is they don't need you to go in and do all the things with your kid, but maybe...
Don't go to camp with them.
Right, no. And I could never have gone in and been a small group leader for my daughters. I want her to have space.
Right.
Where she can share things and talk about things that she might not have with me or...
Well, and even if you were not her small group leader, if you were in the room, she knows that those people can go tell you about it.
Right.
Yeah.
So you, as a parent, you do kind of have to create some space, offering support in other ways depending on your child, by encouraging the youth pastors or leaders, providing them snacks, or giving them gift cards, or just so that they know that they're being thought of, or asking, is there some way I can support the ministry from behind the scenes?
Oh, that's good. Yep.
And so there that one, I feel like there's kind of both and or.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And maybe these people just drop their kids off at youth ministry and they're not involved in the church. I don't know, because this thing is anonymous, so we don't even know who responded.
Right.
And whoever responded, we don't know what response goes with whomever. So
yeah, and they could have had a bad week with that.
Right.
That week, you never know. But also, what I like that kind of goes with that is it's your business to know your kids' business, and that is true. Regardless, we should know who our kids are hanging out with,
who our kids' friends are hanging out with outside of our kids,
where they are. No. And I agree with that. And I think I don't personally know a lot of, now mine are in college, so I'm really out of the realm. But for the most part, I don't really have experience with parents who weren't in their kids' business. I mean, there were different levels of that. Some were way over the top. Some were just, keeping tabs on things. So do you have any? Because you were in kids back in the day.
Yep.
And so I don't have context with that statement, and we can't ask any. So
well, I'll say this. So if you're a working parent and you're exhausted and your kids come home from school and they have a couple hours in the house by themselves, and you only have the weekend to do all of your errands, whatever. Your kids are probably hanging out with a lot of friends that you might not know from school. Mm-hmm. And you can't take your kids' word for it that everything's okay. I have 4 kids, so I can tell you by experience, you cannot take your kids' word for that everything is fine and everything is okay. But there are ways that you can involve yourself in your kid's life and keep tabs on what is going on that doesn't feel overly invasive. You did this, and my girlfriend would say the same thing. You need to have the house where people are hanging out.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, you're the one, you have cookies, so those kids come around the counter. You just have to sit there and be quiet and make dinner. They're going to say it all right there at that kitchen island.
They're so cute. Or they were. I mean, they still are, but they're not around my kitchen counter anymore because they're in college. Another thing that really worked, I loved going up in the evenings as the kids were falling or, getting ready for bed, kind of chilling out and just having conversations. They're sleepy, they're tired from the day, they've kind of processed they're processing all the things, the distractions are over, the practices, the homework. And I would just go up and sit in their bed. Even I would take my phone and just play a game and just be in the room sometimes. And then eventually the conversations would start.
Yeah.
Without even asking questions.
When you're in the car with your kids, don't talk on the phone unless you have to. If you're the one that picks them up from school or the bus stop, or you're picking them up from an outing with friends, just drive. Don't ask a ton of questions. They'll eventually talk. And, I was asking my girlfriend, how do you get your teenage girl to talk? Take her shopping. Take her to Starbucks. How do you get your teenage boy to talk? Buy him some shoes or take him to Chipotle.
That's so great.
And that's how you connect. Your kids are trying to find their freedom from you, or their, autonomy from you. But at the same time, they need to know that you're there for them if they need you. And so if they start to become, and I have seen this way too many times, where kids start to get busy, and maybe your kids are driving now and they have their own friends and they work and everything else. Well, now you took this as your hall pass to just not be present anymore. And that is a huge mistake.
Yeah. I tell you, I still remember the loss that I felt. It was almost like a little grief. I had to reconfigure everything once the kids started driving, and especially after they have their permit and you're with them all the time in the car, and there are all these conversations, and then they start driving themselves everywhere.
Yep.
It left a big hole, and you have to get creative then on how do you have these moments, and taking not just your kid to dinner, but your kid and their 2 friends to dinner. Hey, let me take y'all for some, Moe's tonight.
That's when you get the most information, because they're just talking about life.
Yes.
And you're just eating your taco. Taking it all in.
And then they start talking amongst themselves. And I mean, I still do that.
Yeah.
I still love when the kids come home from college, I still love to take them and friends to lunch.
Yeah, when my son gets done with a shift, he does overnight sometimes at the fire station. I will be ready. Normally I go on a walk, but if he was overnight, I'm sitting there with coffee, just waiting for him to talk. And he'll come in, he's like, hey, do you want to talk over coffee? Yep.
Yes, I do.
I sure do.
So another thing that really stood out in several responses was, you're not in the friend business, someone said. Be the parent. Our job is not to be our kid's friend. To agree with them, to hear all the things. We are to lead by example.
Yep.
We are to be the parent. We are to set the boundaries, hold the boundaries. As hard as it may be sometimes, to set the punishments.
Yes.
All of those things. When I will say, this can be a challenge as your kids get older, like older in high school,
Yeah.
to do this. I mean, they're growing up, they're more independent, they're about to go to college. You still lead by example,
But also,
but maintaining that.
there's different levels. Like if you're in middle school, you have this happening. If your kids are in elementary school, it's going. The middle school's a whole different ball game. But you and Matt did a really great job of training your kids up to be independent of you. And so I think what happens is we assume like we're not their friend, so then we always have to be the staunch one with the response, and we need, you know what I mean? And so there is a better way to do that than just be the one that's in charge, the iron fist, you know?
Right.
There's a way to give them some confidence and teach them how to grow up and be adults. And you and Matt did a good job of that.
Well, thanks. I mean, some days it feels like it. But I think one of the most interesting things I ever heard about parenting was when they're born, we've got this huge wall up around them to protect them, like we have to.
Mm-hmm.
But with each year of life, the wall has to come down a level, right? And so you imagine by the time you send them off, that there's got to be no wall. You've got to trust them at that point because you don't have control anymore. I mean, yeah, you can cut off paying for college or take away their car, things like that, but they are making their decisions now.
Yeah, and your job is to equip them to make wise decisions. And it's different for me because I'm not in the public school, so to speak. I'm not in that whole social realm. And so what I see on my end of the spectrum is people completely sheltering their children from everything. Mm-hmm. I'm talking, we only date to marry. Well, she's 16, so that's sad, right?
Wow.
And also, we don't talk about it because that's not what we do in our house. Well, guess what? Their friends are talking about it, so you better start talking about it.
Absolutely.
And you want them to hear it from you first. I don't care how awkward it is. My poor 13-year-old, we're in that phase right now, and I'm like, listen, buddy, we're going to talk about some things. Your friends might be talking about it. If they're not, you get to hear it here first.
Yeah, that's so true. So often we can be so caught up in the fear and the what ifs and the I don't want this to happen kind of thing that we keep that wall up so far
Yep.
that we don't teach them and guide them into, how to have social media. Like I wanted my kids to have a phone and social media under my roof, so that I was around, I could monitor it, and I could teach them, how do you navigate this?
And teach them how to problem solve. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you think about it, social media is a great social experiment, but you can also, so many great lessons there that you can teach your children if you have created that space for them. And that's the one thing somebody else said. Your kids need to know that you care for them, that they can trust you, and that you can help them. But they have to know that you care for them and they can trust you before they go to you for help.
Mm-hmm. And that's having conversations without a freak out. Even though you're freaking out inside, trust me.
We call it fix your face, girl. Fix your face. Literally, I will have a conversation with God and say, God, please make sure my face looks good. Like, please protect my face. Because I know, my mind is in a lot of places that are not good right now.
So true.
Fix
My face can be my tail. Well, I thought it was interesting that so many of them, and again, this was youth pastors. So this also depends, like we don't know specifically. We didn't ask like middle, high school, college, whatever, be on all of their social media platforms. Now, you're not doing this in college, people. So I'm sure this wasn't a college person. But in middle school, when you first give your kids your phones, this was definitely our rule. Like, I follow you or you're not on it.
Yes.
Like, yes, you can have an Instagram account. No, you can't have this kind of account until you're this age, but we are going to ease into it. And I told my kids, I said, you get one chance, and then the second time it goes south, you get a flip phone. And they knew a minute. But they each like messed up once, you know, and I'm talking just like an inappropriate word on a post that just
Right.
wasn't classy or appropriate, you know, that I'm like, this is not the image you want on social media.
Right.
And it's like, well, I was with a friend and, you know, and I'm like, I understand. But this is what we're learning.
Right.
This is for the whole world to see. This is for the people in my Bible study at my church. These are the people in your small group. These are the people at your school. These are people's parents. Like, you're putting this out there for the world to see. And so teaching them that, and it made an impact on them. I'm like, so you had your one chance.
Yeah.
You correct it. Now you know better. If it happens again, you get a flip phone.
And it does help to have conversations leading up to all these things. So you said you guys used to do a contract. So
Yes.
we have set the boundaries. When we're giving you this privilege, it comes with boundaries.
Yes.
And they are spoken boundaries. We've all talked about them. So that way you're not reacting. You're already ready for it.
I'm telling you, the contract, we had so many, like our kitchen cabinets were lined with these about each thing. You know, it was like for phones, for cars, for allowances, for, you know, and like budget, things like that, because we wanted to have a conversation with our kids for us to agree on things.
Right.
We weren't going to force it down their throats. Like, we wanted it to be a mutual conversation. But honestly, we needed it in writing, not just for them, but also for us, because we would forget.
Right? Yes, we are at that age.
So I would type it all up based on what we agreed. We would read it, reread it, they would reread it, and we'd all sign it.
Uh-huh.
And then when something happened, we would go back. It was like, well, this is what the consequence is. No, that's not what you said. I'm like, let's go back to the contract.
Nice. Yep.
We could always go back to the
We
contract.
call that CYA. If you don't know what that means, that's okay. I'm not going to say it because this is a Christian podcast. Cover your butt, okay?
But it was so good because then there was no arguing.
Right.
They couldn't argue, and I couldn't go back on it.
Yeah.
You know, I couldn't. It was like, well, this is our contract. Mm-hmm. This is what we both agreed on, so this is what is going to happen. And so it gives, anyway, a lot of freedom. So I love that they said that. But
one more thing I saw that I really appreciated, and this kind of goes back to, you know, knowing who your kids are hanging out with, is you need to have other people in your life, friends of yours, families. You need to be intentional about who you create relationships with, because you want your kids, when they're middle school, if you aren't there yet, high school, nothing you say matters anymore, because they're going to go test this now. It's time for them to test and see if what you've always told them and taught them is true. And so the people that they're hanging out with, you want them to say the things that you would say. You want to know, oh my gosh, if they go to John's house and this happens, this is how they're going to respond, because I know John's parents, mm-hmm. and I know John's parents' hearts, and I've watched them parent, and I have no fear.
Yeah, I loved how they said that. Like, you need to have other Christian adults in your kid's life. And I think there can be a lot of pressure for youth pastors to be that one other person outside of the parent, to be that and have that role. But years ago, I read a fabulous book called Sticky Faith. Mm-hmm. And it talked about this exact same. It was basically research to figure out what was the difference between the kids who grew up in the church and went to college and then fell off the wagon, and those who went to college and like stayed on the Christian route. And it wasn't going to youth group, and it wasn't mission trips, and it wasn't church or VBS. It was having other Christian adult mentors in their lives. Because it's someone else outside of church and outside of you that they are holding them accountable. And let me tell you something. They're saying, these people are telling them the exact same things that we're telling them.
Right.
But we're the parent. So they're not going to listen to us. They're
Yeah.
going to listen to these other people. And so having these Christian mentors that are holding our kids accountable is the key to that sticky faith. So I thought, wow, that is a youth pastor who knows what they're talking about. And it can't just be you and a youth pastor. I mean, that is
No.
great.
And that's not fair to the youth pastor. Lord have mercy. Nope.
Yes. I mean, that's way too much responsibility. There need to be other people in their lives. Like, who is that? Ask yourself, who could send my child with to have coffee, to have lunch, just to sit, to chat, to create that relationship, if it doesn't already exist.
I mean, like for one of my kids, the greatest thing we did is we found somebody that was like a life coach. Mm-hmm. Because they were at the age where no matter what I said, that probably wasn't going to work. But if I found a life coach, and I didn't get to know what the life coach said, but I knew the life coach. Mm. I have no idea what happened in those sessions. But let me tell you something, they worked.
There you go.
But it's because that person, that life coach, happened to be a football coach of another kid of mine. And so that's how I made that connection. And I was like, wow, that's a good mentor. And it's not like I was like, hi, you're going to go see a mentor today.
Right.
You can't say, hey, you're going to the mentor's house. No, you're going over to the Smith's house. Go have a good time.
Mm-hmm. Well, I have a friend who all of her kids, their responsibility in high school, I don't know if it started sophomore, junior, definitely junior and senior year it started. And their job was to pick 10 individuals.
That's a lot.
Well, I mean, when you're in a community, maybe it's not so big in homeschool, but when you've got like church and school and, a community of friends, like parents of your friends who are whatever. So pick these people and set up a time to go sit down with them and take them to coffee and ask them these questions.
Okay.
What was it about, like intentional questions? What was the turning point for you in your faith? Really intentional questions. And it was basically like forcing them outside of their comfort zone. And then some of those relationships continued. Wow. And they would continue to have other relationships. But it was a great idea. I wish I had my kids do it. I learned about it too late.
I know. Well, guys, I hope this was enlightening for you. And if you want to know more about what your youth pastors are feeling for themselves, go back to last week's episode.
Yes.
Yeah. Pray for your kids.
And pray for your youth pastors.
Yeah. Yeah.
And your pastors, all the leaders around you. Everyone needs prayer. Everyone. Because we're all human.
That's right. We're all human.
We're all human. Thanks so much for joining us this week on The Sinner and the Saint.